Lexi under saddle, what we've been doing to help out Marianne and Lexi is I've been doing the first part of the ride, which we'll do a little bit of video on. So I just got on her. She's in that sort of awkward phase of changing from front end stability to hindquarter stability, changing from using muscles for her stability into finding skeletal stability. So I'm having Marianne ride in my saddle today just because you can feel a bit more than the regular deep-seated, extra padded dressage saddles. This is more of a close contact saddle. It's a training saddle that's kind of a cross between a jump saddle and dressage. And what I like about it is I can feel all the movement. So there she gets stuck, drops her back, pushes back. So we're staying on the tight figure 8 to really encourage Lexi to keep her hind legs under her. The challenge with doing tight turns is the rotational stability through the barrel and the hindquarters, as well as keeping the neck straight. So I've got just enough rein contact to sort of rapidly try to keep the lower neck between the scapula as we change direction. And I'm invisibly shifting my weight over wherever she pushes up against me. So whether that's right now, it's more in the back of the saddle, and there as she lengthens her neck, right, that's the sign that she's starting to get straighter. But it takes a little longer to get that length through the neck on the tight turns, because even though the hind legs engagement's a little easier on the tight turns if they can stay straight and level, but straightness and levelness is harder. So that's the trick to using tight turns in order to really stabilize the pelvis and engage the hind legs. So she's starting off a little better. She's not quite as shaky or wobbly as she used to be. And that point of pressure that I usually have to sit against, there's a nice little blow, is not as intense. It's a little more subtle, which tells me her muscles are loosening up so I don't get a ton of pressure up against my seat. But right now, it's kind of shifting around a lot. So I have to shift my weight. And it helps. I just am doing it with dropped stirrups, number one, because I forgot to put my boots and half chaps on. And number two, because it's easier to feel a difference through our seat when our legs are dangling. And the other way to really feel the pressure changes under all 4 quadrants, or one quadrant versus the other quadrants under your seat in the saddle, is to bring the legs up like this. And it's a little harder when they're not very forward, but as soon as we bring our legs up, we can't cheat with our legs, right? So I can feel where I need to put my torso weight as soon as my legs are kind of out of the equation, right? But if you're sensitive to it, you only need to do that until you're sensitive to it. And then once you kind of sensitize to it, you become aware of that little point of pressure moving around under the saddle. The legs dangling is kind of the next phase for feeling where your weight needs to be rather than responding to that point of pressure, which is there whether we know it or not. But how we respond to it is what changes the horse's coordination. And unconsciously, as a human, we're going to respond to it by tightening our legs, or tightening our arms, or getting moved around by it and having to brace in the stirrups and hang on to the reins. So this is already getting a little better. She's lengthening her neck, but when she lengthens her neck, her weight sort of falls forward. She doesn't have great control over it. So the lengthening of the neck is just the spontaneous result of getting the weight more equal left to right. right? As she lengthens the neck, she has a very hard time resisting that body weight from overloading the front legs. So that's what the constant tight turning on the figure eight is helping her with. So just there on a little short straight line, she starts pulling on the reins and getting a little heavier. And as soon as I start the turn, she tries to engage the hind legs by sort of dropping her back, tightening her neck. And that's when you're mostly going to feel the pressure under your seat, shift left or right. It could be in the back half of the saddle or the front half of the saddle, but it's going to shift left or right during the tightest part of the turn, because that's where she has to really use the inside hind, well, both hind legs, but especially the inside hind leg. So then coming out of the turn, it's a little easier for her to lengthen her neck on a straight line, but it's easier for her to lose her hind legs. So just there, she shortened everything up. And she seems to really like, not only, I think because the turn makes it so difficult for her to stay level and straight, that when she lengthens the neck, she likes just a little bit of rein contact or rein resistance until she gets better control over her own body weight with a long neck. And she's probably a little itchy. She's pretty focused and she's very calm. So all the heaviness I feel tells me that it is mostly a physical challenge. She doesn't feel scared or anxious. She's staying pretty focused even on a windy day or whatever the neighbors are doing. So the ears half back tell me she's really concentrating. And even though she's a little hard to ride, hard to balance on, and a little heavy to the aids, it tells you she's trying her best. She's figuring it out. This is just difficult for her. But I'm happy she's not slamming on the brakes as hard as she was before. Like she gets a little slow, she gets a little sticky, like she's gonna stop. And then I just give her a light leg or a light tap with the whip and she's walking through it, which is a big deal for her. There's a little clunk on the right shoulder, then the left shoulder. Her tail's to the left, yeah. And that's actually where I'm feeling the pressure more often, is under the back left quadrant of the saddle. So that's where she's holding some muscular tension. Where it used to be kind of the right quadrant, back right quadrant of the saddle, because she overloaded the left front, it's reversed. And that's why we have to feel it, is because it changes in unpredictable ways as coordination changes. So it's, you know, inside leg to outside rein is only going to work a very small percentage of time, depending on that horse's coordination at that moment. So like here, every time we make a left turn, I get the most amount of pressure under my left seat and left leg, telling me she's much tighter back there compared to the right side. I still get some pressure under the right seat bone and the right back quadrant on the right turn, but not, it's like half as much as what I feel on the left turn.
And is that because her injury was on her right hind, but when we did that scintigraphy, all the pain was in the neck and the left side?
So if there's restriction, like with her injury to her right hind leg, they can shift the weight away from that hind leg to the opposite front leg, sometimes the same front leg. And what that does is create more and more muscular restriction because it's protecting the injury, but it keeps setting up more and more muscular restriction around the right hind leg. And it starts concussing and overloading the left front leg typically. And that was her biggest issue when we started with her. But what I'm describing now is exactly the opposite of that. Yeah, and we like to think we can sort of drive the hind end under and engage the hindquarters. And I don't find it works like that. When we start changing coordination, the least functional hind leg has to catch up. Then as you improve engagement, what's happening now is because she was generally disengaged and really not using her right hind leg much at all, the focus was just restoring function to the right hind leg. Now as that's easier for her, now we feel the challenge on the left direction or the left hind leg, because now that leg has to catch up to the function of the right hind leg. And I find it goes back and forth like that a lot. It doesn't, like both hind legs don't just step under to a new leg use all at once. They'll do it a little better with the right hind leg or the left hind leg. And then as you get one kind of worked through, the other one needs to catch up. And it goes back and forth like that until the engagement is really solid as a new part of the coordination. And we just think, oh, if we put enough pressure on them, we're going to somehow tuck the hind legs underneath and it's going to be fine. Or we're going to lift the back and everything will be equal and symmetrical. And it's just not. And bodies are kind of complicated that way. So if you're really getting authentic changes, before you get balance, you get a multitude of changes that aren't balance. Does that make sense? So as soon...
And I'm just trying to, so I'm thinking about a car, like if you have to do an alignment on a car, and then if does one wheel will get more worn if there's an alignment.
Right, so if your car has an alignment issue, one tire is going to wear out, right? And what you have to do is recalibrate the alignment, and that may or may not stick at first. I mean...
Also, horses have all the tendons and all the other things that hold them together, so it's much more complicated.
It's much more complicated than a car because we're dealing with soft tissues, we're dealing with weight distribution that's constantly changing and coordination that's constantly changing based on the path of travel, the footing, the incline decline, the speed, the rider, the saddle.
To corrective shoeing and mess everything else up sometimes too?
The feet should reflect the weight distribution of the horse. So like having one flat foot and one upright foot shows you there's excessive weight bearing more on one hoof than the other. Her issue with really losing her mind trying to put back shoes on probably had to do with the muscular tightness and restriction that comes with a disengaged hindquarter, right? So it just gets tighter and tighter back there trying to stabilize because the weight's not in the right place, and they just get really sore. They don't want to pick up their hind feet for the farrier.
And those sore muscles and those that are been so... Anyway, they're just for an injury waiting to happen because they're so...
So when the weight's in the wrong place, it's going to stress or strain soft tissues in the opposite direction, whether it's tendon, ligament, muscle, fascia. Any soft tissue is kind of like a rubber band, and if the weight isn't going through the bones appropriately, then the excessive weight, like we could say toward the right front in this case, is going to create muscular restriction around the left hind, right? And it can lead to injury, or it makes the body prone to injury because you're already straining the soft tissue use, right? And there's already too much weight in one direction instead of being equalized left to right and front to back. It's unequal. So that's going to affect, there's another clunk. So that is the soft tissue change. That is the change in the rubber bands because she's starting to control her own body weight and not overload the front legs as much as she is used to doing. That's the change in coordination, gives you those spontaneous changes in muscle use, and sometimes even like chiropractic type bony adjustments. So there she's still really, like, I'm having to really concentrate to keep my weight on the left side, which is opposite of her old deal.
Right.
So that can be a sign of progress, but it means we're not in balance yet. But things are changing pretty drastically in how she's coordinating her body for movement. And that's the exciting part. Even if it's not perfect, it's like, okay, we're making some progress, but we can't leave it like this or we just create a new problem.
So, and I also question, so when this horse was full of anxiety before, and that anxiety, does that have a different muscle use then when you're anxious?
So whether it's anxiety or tension, when the fight-flight nervous system takes over, the posture they adopt is physiological for short-term survival. So they drop their back, they disengage the hindquarters, they shorten all the muscles because that's what gives the muscles instant power. And the stress hormones are really what's producing the energy, not the coordination, right? So the stress hormones with that shortening contraction through the neck and the top line, it gives them power right away for short-term survival. But at the same time, it has a destabilizing effect through the core muscles and the axial skeleton. So if that's how we're getting power and speed out of the horse, it's just going to keep depleting their strength and their health over the long term. Because it's meant to be a short-term deal, and when we use it long-term to make the horses go fast or take long strides or do whatever, then it keeps depleting the health, whether it's musculoskeletal health or vital organs or digestion or ulcers, it doesn't matter. It's going to have some kind of long-term health effect because the coordination is just, the body's not meant to work that way long-term. But we do that with horses because then we can shortcut training.
Yes. And then if that shortcut training is like that too, that's the training that probably is being done at home because that's what they're reproducing when they're in the show ring.
Yeah, when you go to a show, you see what the training was like at home. I go, the show is not the place to be training, it's the place to show the result of your training at home. And if it's been training while the horse is stressed out, that's going to show up in the show. And even if the horse gets excited at a show, if you have a good foundation of training, that's going to override the stress of the show environment.
That's where I was thinking that, because I would want to say the show nerves it's still the same nerves that you had at home that you're producing at the show, but most likely.
Yeah, so the nervous system, however the nervous system is used, is cumulative, like money in the bank. So if she's calm and focused during training while we're changing coordination, we're putting that calm, focused attention in the bank all the time. If she were doing this while she was distracted, anxious, stressed out, pissed off, unhappy, then that's
Like this, yeah.
then we've got no money in the bank,
Yeah.
right? So when you go to a show, it's like you're relying on your bank account of what you've done in training. So if I've been filling the bank account with calm, focused attention during skill development, then even in a show situation, I can write that check.
Yeah.
I've got enough in the bank. Yeah, and if I haven't been stuffing the bank account in the right nervous system with calm, focused attention and something that benefits the horse, then going to a show, I'm overdrawn. I just trying to write a check that my horse can't cash, right?
You're riding on this stress adrenaline that you have at home.
Yeah, and because a show situation is just going to magnify it, there's nothing to fall back on if that's how the daily training has been going. You only can you can work through a stressful environment really quickly if you have the nervous system habitually in a relaxation response and not under stress response. And she's still, even though she's in a relaxation response, she's calm and she's focused. It doesn't mean that changing the coordination is easy. It just means that the changes are going to stick. That's all it means. And there, finally, her tail changed. But I've still got this big lump of pressure under the left side. So, what's that?
Her tail is still to the left.
No, it just centered out. She just swished it and changed it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you can feel that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because that tail swish was also a change in her back muscles that I felt as a reduction of pressure under my left seat bone. Right? So that was her. She's still pushing up on that side, but the amount of force went down. So she's still organizing, not quite straight, not quite equal, but it's getting easier and easier for her to start getting better control over her body weight. So even there where I have to be harsh with her, she didn't respond negatively because it was helping her adjust.
Up a little bit to position her weight, and then more control.
Yeah.
She's having more control where what she's doing with her back leg.
So this is now, she's pretty warmed up. She's not easy, but it's easier. She's starting to slide into this feeling more comfortable. Less of me having to really shift my weight, or less heavy on the reins, more willing to go forward, even picking up a tiny bit more forward energy. So then we'll have you get on her, and at least today with the saddle on, the whole purpose of having you ride in this saddle is just to change the experience of what you feel. That's it. Yeah. And then when you get back in your dressage saddle with more padding, the feel is there, it's just more subtle. So when you're learning to look for it, it doesn't help you to have a ton of padding.